My neighbor Jamie and I hold a classic Halloween house decorating contest. A little competition we like to do against each other with various tricks we play on each other, leading up to our final reveal on Halloween. As years went on, expectations were always exceeded, especially as children started to come into our lives, fueling the rivalry to grow even stronger. Jamie and our daughter Frances began challenging us from the end of September. The tricks were simple, some consisting of leaving skeletons on our car roof and hiding spiders in our mailbox. My son Michael and I would retaliate with mysterious phone calls and placing an inflatable sea monster in her pool. My favorite part of the season was when we joined forces on October 31st and tricked the rest of the neighborhood together. But October 31st, 2005 was different. The preceding days, we got together to plan our children's costumes, as well as the pranks for the trick-or-treaters. Everything was meticulously planned for an epic Halloween. As the much-anticipated 31st arrived and nightfall approached, we started noticing the activity on the street peak. It was a real spectacle watching the whole neighborhood get into the Halloween spirit. Groups of children and adults playing pranks, and even dogs wearing costumes. Children began knocking on our door around 6:15 p.m., displaying a variety of costumes. We eagerly waited for Jamie and Frances to head over to give everyone a scare. Kids came to our door and praised our decorations, but they raved about Jamie's setup. This made us a tad jealous. It was always a friendly competition, but both of us always aimed for the very best. An hour went by, and there was no sign of Jamie or Frances. A little curious about their absence, we decided to call. An excited Frances answered, saying her mom had gone out and was waiting for her to return before joining us. We found it odd, but assumed, given Jamie's efforts, that she was prepping for her biggest prank ever. Another hour passed, and more children came. We kept hearing about a horrifying dummy hanging from a tree at Jamie's house. We wondered if that was a big surprise, since we had helped Jamie decorate and didn't remember anything like it. So, we decided to check out her big reveal. We left our candies at our doorstep for any kids who might come while we were gone. It was a chilly night. The trees and their twisting branches created a spooky atmosphere. Approaching the house, we saw what everyone was talking about. A corpse in costume hanging from a tree, the rope around its neck tied to the highest branch. Many kids and adults stood at a distance, discussing how eerie it was. Indeed, it looked very real. The body swayed in the wind. Watching it made my skin crawl. Before checking the mysterious figure, we knocked on the door. Frances answered, looking happy to see us, but clearly unaware of the new decoration out front. As soon as she opened the door, she noticed the crowd and our puzzled faces. She stepped out asking, "What's this?" As she approached the tree, I followed her, asking if it was a prank by her mom, but she didn't answer. Standing face to face with the macabre decoration, a gust of wind turned the body to face us. Just then, it became clear that this was no Halloween surprise. The hanging corpse was real. In fact, it was Daniel, her husband, suspended in the air with a puncture wound just above his heart. Baffled and horrified, I turned around, seeking answers. Frances was in shock. Michael was crying uncontrollably, and the crowd began to grow with more spectators. Suddenly, a spine-chilling laugh approached from the darkness, echoing louder from Jamie's backyard. Emerging from the shadows, with her right hand wrapped around a bloodied knife, Jamie continued to laugh hysterically, looking like someone who had completed their masterpiece, and screamed, "Trick or treat!"
right?
I remember that morning like any other, but this one wouldn't be the same. I've been a mailman for over 10 years. It's a job that keeps you in a routine, but at the same time, you're always ready for a surprise. The routes are filled with unexpected situations, but for the most part, they are disguised amongst the normality of daily life. On the morning of November 1st, 2018, I had my usual large cup of coffee with me. The day was cloudy, but without any sign of rain, just overcast. I had my vehicle parked as I checked the delivery route for that day. This route, among many I've covered, was one of the most relaxed and peaceful. A residential area with middle-class homes, classic houses with front porches, not too eccentric gardens, and in some cases, a swimming pool. Just average families who, during this season, made an effort to decorate their homes for Halloween to impress their neighbors. I knew most of them. I'd been doing the same route for quite a while and rarely encountered anything new, just the usual. Maybe a new pet trying to bite me or some kids trying to prank me. Overall, not many changes. This year, the Halloween spirit was evident, with remnants of the previous night's activities. Traces of candy littered the entrances of houses, occasional skull decorations moving with the wind, and pumpkins with faces still flickering with light. I enjoyed seeing the effort people put into their decorations. Gradually, I covered the route, still encountering the occasional child still in costume. As I was about to finish the route, I reached the final street. Here, the decorations were less ambitious, but I still enjoyed observing the gardens with fake graves, Dracula figures, and fog machines nestled among the bushes. At the second-to-last house on the route, Mr. Miller was waiting for me on his porch, as always, eager to chat and receive his packages. He briefly mentioned that many children had come trick-or-treating the previous night. Within half an hour, his candy stash was gone, but his neighbor, Mr. Frederick, had given him some extras so he wouldn't find his porch covered in toilet paper and eggs from disappointed children. However, when he went over later that night to thank Mr. Frederick, he couldn't find him. I told him I would pass on his thanks to Mr. Frederick, as I had a letter to deliver to him. I resumed my route, parking in front of Mr. Frederick's house. I walked up to the door, noticing that he had a decent Halloween setup. His car was parked outside, and a large tree in the yard was decorated with spiders, witches, and things like that. At the base of the tree, there was a body lying face down. It looked so real and eerie that I took a picture and uploaded it to my Instagram stories. I rang the doorbell several times and heard Brody, Mr. Frederick's dog, barking from inside, which was odd because he knows me and had never barked at me before. I didn't persist and returned to my vehicle, once again pausing to admire that impressive Halloween prop. I left the letter in the mailbox and finished my route. The next day, I carried out my usual routine, delivering all the packages without any issues. As usual, I met Mr. Miller on his porch. He looked distraught and approached my van, asking, "Did you hear about Mr. Frederick?" My heart instantly dropped. I told him I didn't know what he was talking about, and that's when Mr. Miller told me the most disturbing thing I've ever heard. They found Mr. Frederick's body at the front of his house, by the tree, lying face down. It seems he had a heart attack last night, and no one noticed. I don't understand. You saw him yesterday when you delivered the letter, didn't you? Before Mr. Miller could finish his sentence, my mind flashed back to that moment when I walked in front of Mr. Frederick's house, how I took out my phone and photographed his lifeless body. Not even 24 hours had passed, and that photo still lingered on my Instagram story, displaying Mr. Frederick's corpse for the world to see. Distraught and with a shaky voice, I told Mr. Miller that I had left the letter in the mailbox because Mr. Frederick hadn't answered the door. Immediately, Mr. Miller shared something even more shocking. The police, upon examining Mr. Frederick's mail, had opened the letter I had delivered. Written in pen, it simply said, "Rest in peace." There was no signature, no sender.
Halloween night, 1952. The neighborhood was draped in fog and shadows, and for me, it marked the 49th year of watching the dance between mischief and moonlight. The streets, once filled with the innocent laughter of children in costume, the amber glow from the jack-o'-lanterns, and the sharp chill of the season cutting through my coat, had become all too predictable. But that night, I sensed something sinister in the air. As I lit my cigarette and looked out my window, little did I know it'd be the last time I'd watch Halloween unfold. While dressing up was never my thing, I took pride in decorating my home. I always felt proud when the children got a little spook from my front yard haunts or when the neighbors would praise my unique interpretations of the holiday. I even took pride in knowing I was the house that always had a plethora of candy for the little ones who knocked on my door. That Halloween, an unforgiving storm had raged the eve before, drowning the streets with water. Sidewalks were scattered with nature's casualties, branches torn from trees and leaves plastered to the cars along the street. But the neighborhood grit, it couldn't be washed away, not by rain nor sorrow. Children with a hunger for more than just candies took to the streets, undeterred by nature's cruel trick. Usually by the 11th hour, the hustle would die down. But that night, like a broken record, every 10 ticks of the clock brought another knock on the door, a new silhouette casting shadows from the streetlight's dim glow. The festivities stretched till the stroke of midnight. With every ounce of energy spent, and a hint of pride, I sauntered to the kitchen, pouring myself a nightcap. About midnight, the doorbell rang again. I was now on the second floor, just about to go to bed. Still, I didn't want to ignore it, thinking it must be a child who was left behind. Getting out of my warm sheets, I made my way to the front door. The doorbell rang again. "Coming!" I shouted to signal that I was on my way. I carefully descended the stairs. The bell rang a third time. I'm coming, I repeated while grabbing the candy bowl. Just before I could reach the door, the bell rang again. "I'm here!" I gasped as I swung open the door. Standing before me, a shadowy figure loomed. This wasn't some lost child. The height gave it away. He was dressed simply for such a celebrated holiday, worn-out jeans and a checkered shirt that looked like they'd seen better days. The person held a weapon in their hand, but it was his makeshift mask, a tattered pillowcase with crudely cut eyes, that stole my focus. Our eyes locked as he held a gun pointing straight at my face. I didn't shake. Those eyes, they bore into me, frenzied and unblinking. The muffled sound of frantic breathing echoed from behind the mask, finally breaking the silence to deliver a chilling ultimatum. "Trick or treat, give me the money, or I'll shoot." I laughed, a humorless chuckle. "What's this? Some twisted gag? George, is that you playing another one of your games?" I didn't give him a chance to answer before snapping, "Cut the act, George." I'd assumed it was one of George's schemes. That cousin of mine has a knack for poorly timed jokes. Slowly but deliberately, I reached for the gun with my free hand. Its icy steel met my fingertips, a chilling reminder of the situation's gravity. But he didn't flinch, didn't back down. There was a pause, thick with tension, before he whispered, "The safe downstairs, now." Realization sank its teeth into me. This wasn't a prank. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice holding a sharp edge. As I tried to force the gun away, our scuffle was punctuated by a mocking boo just as a shot rang out. A burning sensation spread across my throat, and as I sank to my knees, the world faded to black. As dawn broke on November 1st, the city awoke to a chilling tableau. There I was, slouched against the weathered wood of my own front door, a canvas painted with my own blood. That damned pillowcase mask, the twisted signature of a deranged mind, was placed over my head. And in a cruel twist of irony, candies lay strewn about. The very symbol of the night's festivities now tainted with a gruesome memory.